the one thing that bothered all of us every day is that every day, no matter where you were in Vietnam, you would see that silver bird fly over your head, knowing that it was going home and you weren't. And that kind of, every day, that kind of pounded on you a little bit, that I wish I was someplace else in here. I only lost one person or two in Vietnam. I got a call. We were on a position on top of Hai Van Pass. We got a call that our other position 3 miles down the road had just been hit. And they said, we have people down. And so I had to get 3 miles down the road as fast as I could. Well, that at that position was my other corpsman and a ARVN soldier. I got down there and the ARVN soldier had what we call a death rattle. I couldn't do anything for him. He'd been hit in the head with shrapnel. The other one was my corpsman, and he had had his arm blown off. And it took me so long to get down there that he bled out, and he died in my arms. And there's nothing I tried to save him, but the hospital ship Repose was right out in the Gulf. I could see the ship. I saw the helicopter take off and come in to try to help us, but it was too late. Oh. I couldn't save him. Earlier that morning, I'd been outside my tent, and I don't know what we were doing. I was with my lieutenant, and a grenade went off, and I took shrapnel on my leg, and I had to try running down that 3 miles with my injury, and I just couldn't get to him in time. And that's the one thing that
stays with you.
That's bothered me the most.
Today is Friday, May 19th. It's 4 p.m. My name is David Pyle, and I'm interviewing Barry Stevens and at the Rocky Mountain Regional VA Medical Center in Aurora, Colorado, as part of the Remembering Our Veterans program. So Barry, thanks for being here today. It's truly appreciated. And so we can just get right into it. So I'm curious as where you're from, and tell me about your early days, your childhood, where you're from.
Okay. I was born in Denver. I was raised in Denver, over on the north side. And I went to school, again, over in the north side. Part of north side where I went to school was kind of mafia type. It was a Mount Carmel church, and they're all Italian, except me. And we had quite a time over there. I remember walking past a dead body on the sidewalk one day, and his name was Walkie Talkie Roberts, and he had a yellow canary in his mouth, which kind of gives us a connotation of what his problem was. Anyway, I went to another school called Mary Chris. This was a nunnery over on 52nd and Federal Boulevard. And that's where I learned to become an altar boy and to serve at numerous churches as an altar boy. I served as an altar boy until I was 20 years old, while I was in college at the National Newman Foundation. I was a regional vice president of the National Newman Foundation. I was going to, I won a scholarship in speech and debate to a college in Wisconsin, but I couldn't take it because we couldn't afford it. We just didn't, we were poor. So I did get to Greeley, and then it was Colorado State College, and I majored in special education, a major in speech therapy, and a minor in audiology. And I also was in the Air Force ROTC program while I was there. Getting toward the end of my senior year, I found out that I wasn't doing very well in school, and I dropped ROTC. It wasn't very long after that I received this wonderful welcoming letter saying, "We're the Army and we want you." And I thought they weren't supposed to take you while you were in school, but they didn't listen to the program. And so I went down to my local recruiter, and he said, well, we got to put you somewhere. What was your major? And I told him it was kind of medical. He said, we'll put you in the medical. That'd be a nice place for you. I didn't really understand what he was talking about at the time, but I ended up in the Navy, and actually, I had gone through a mini boot camp with the Air Force, ROTC, and then I went to the Navy and I went through their boot camp. They didn't want me all the time. They sent me to the Marine Corps, so I went to a third boot camp. I was real boot camp trained by the time I was ready to go anywhere. Anyway, I ended up at Balboa Hospital in San Diego, and that was a nice place. We were directly across from the zoo, and we could hear the lions roaring at night. That just got your impetus up to make sure you got out of there. Anyway, I went for 4 months there and learned basically to be a nurse. First thing they did is they sent me to a ward to take care of patients, and the patients that I took care of, I went in and I took care of Bob one day, and I went back the next day and we lost Bob last night. And I said, okay, we'll give you somebody else. We're going to see Carl today. And I saw Carl and I went back the next day, where's Carl? We lost Carl last night. They didn't tell me it was a carcinoma ward. And I lost all of my 7 patients in 7 days. And I'm sitting there thinking, what in the hell am I doing here? Am I causing their deaths, or why are they dying and I'm not having a real good time? And so they transferred me around the hospital. I ended up not in it, but I was in pediatrics, where I took care of 4 children and 3 feeders. And I was the only corpsman that was ever done that at that hospital. And I enjoyed it. But my final place I went to was the emergency room. And I worked emergency, and I enjoyed emergency because you didn't have to see people day after day. You see them when they came in, you take care of them, and they'd leave. One of the problems I had there is that Marines are not real logical at times. We had a Marine that went out on the grenade range and decided he didn't want to die in Vietnam. So he gathered all of his friends around and pulled the pin. And we suddenly had 26 Marines that we were taking care of one time, trying to take care of them in the hallways and putting in stents and doing everything we could to try to save their lives. That was one of the fallacy that I had with Marines. They weren't real logical at times. So I went into a physical therapy group to study to be a physical therapist while I was there. And I had 2 weeks to go, and the military decided they were going to send me to Vietnam and pulled me out of school. And that would have given me an official U.S. certification for physical therapy all over the United States. But I had a lieutenant commander who fought real hard for me to get me to stay, but they wouldn't do it, and they sent me to Vietnam. I went to Vietnam. On my way to Vietnam, we went out and got in our little airplanes. And before I got into the airplane, I looked up, and here was President Johnson standing there, shaking my hand, saying, "Good luck, son." And I'm sitting there thinking, he's sending me over to die and telling me good luck? There's something wrong with this. But I went ahead and got on the plane anyway. And we flew over on an American Airlines, and we ended up in Da Nang. My first impression of Da Nang is I looked over and there was a stack of body bags, and they weren't empty. And that was not a real good feeling to see that. And that kind of gave me an idea that maybe this is for real. We're not talking ifs, ands, or buts. People are getting killed over here. And then they herded us into a 6x truck, and they drove us down the road, down to Dong Ha and Quang Tri. And as I was going down the road, which is about 30 miles, another thing that caught my attention, that there were a bunch of 4 to 6-year-olds standing on the side of the road. They were all naked, and they were throwing us the screw you finger, yelling, "F you, Joe, give me a candy. F you, Joe, give me a cigarette." And I looked at that and thought, I don't think we see that in America, not even in Kansas, where they're a little strange. But we got down at Plain Tree, and we went into barracks for the night. And they didn't bother to tell me that the week before that, had sappers went through there and throwing sapper bombs into the tents, and they had killed an American there. And they were still finding little parts of his body. And here we were sleeping there at night. And as soon as we got up, they asked me, where do you want to go? You have a chance, you can go to 19 or you can go to 126. And I sat there and said, I've heard of 19. They're called The Walking Dead for a reason. I don't think I want to go there. I'll go to 126. And so they choppered me to where 126 area was. And that area was a hill, 861 South and 881 South and 861. These are two hills that they weren't real mountain type. They were about 6,000 feet tall each. But at the bottom of them was a place called Quezon. Quezon at the time was taking 1,500 incoming rounds a day. When you went in by airplane, they didn't stop. They just went on through and threw you out the back. And that went for the ammunition, and it didn't matter that they weren't landing, because it's just, they were there 30 seconds, they were taken around. And what they did with me is I started at 861, and from 861, they would transfer me between the three. I'd go to Quezon, I'd go to 561, wherever there was needed, they would send me to. Now, I want to tell you something about corpsmen. Corpsmen are basically the medic for the Marine Corps and the Navy. Army and Air Force and the Coast Guard, and that they have medics. And everybody knows basically what a medic is and what a medic does. Corpsmen were a little different. We were trained to take care of medicine and wounds and injuries, but at the same time, we were thought of more like psychiatrists and anything else that the Marines wanted, up to and including their officers. I had many conversations with them about home and life and why they were there and why they didn't want to be there. And so it was up to us to answer their questions the best we could, to take care of both their physical and mental problems. Sometimes this got hard, especially when you're dealing with Marines that were getting Dear John letters from home, along with rotten pictures that were sent along with it of girlfriends and their new boyfriends, telling these Marines how rotten they were and how they shouldn't have ever left there. And it was up to me to try to console them and convince them that there was a reason for being in Vietnam, doing what they were doing, protecting our country, fighting for our freedoms. And that got hard on you, because the main thing, the first thing they told us in course school is you can't be friends. You cannot be a friend to anybody. And the only friend I could possibly be close to would be other corpsmen, the other ones that you could talk to. And so it was kind of hard dealing with all these problems, up to and including my officers running around being upset because they couldn't find a fourth to play bridge. And I happen to know how to play bridge, so that made them happy. But a corpsman with many things in Vietnam, the enemy realized this also. They had a $250 bounty on our heads, us and radiomen. They could kill either one of us, they would, and they tried. I think, according to the final statistics, we lost 720 corpsmen and medics in Vietnam, just that unit alone. So we knew they were after us. We knew they were trying to get us. Enough for that tirade. Once I got up on the hill, 861 South, I ran into a gunny sergeant. Well, before I left, I became a fat boy. I put on about 180 pounds. And Marines don't like that. So he said, get over there and start filling sandbags. And I'm going, but I'm a corpsman. Shut up. You're not a corpsman, you're a Marine. Get over there. Okay, so I started filling sandbags. And he said, oh, I see we got a new squid up here on the hill. So I turned to him after I thought about it, and I said, do you know what a squid is? Well, no, not really. Well, squid is something that floats around the ocean shitting on marine life. That shut him up. So from then on, he called me Doc. That, that's the only thing I could think to say at the time. But of course, I knew they were going to test me every time something went out. We had somebody, lots of communication with some of our other Marines that were out there on watches. And they woke me up at 3 in the morning and had me go out and fix the wire. And I never took off my boots in Vietnam because I had too many guys that were getting scorpions and mice and rats and all kinds of things in their boots when they took them off. And I decided I don't want to play with that game. I'll just be ready to go. So I did that. The first night, I went down to the command post where the lieutenant was, and he was talking to a forward observer we had out there. And this guy says, I've got movement in front of my position. Can I fire what we called a jack off, which was a handheld rocket flare? And he said, no. And they argued back and forth for about 10 minutes. Finally, the lieutenant said, all right, fire the damn thing. And the Marine fired it. He called right back. He said, I've got an NVA soldier at the wire. He's got a pack on his head, a rifle in his hand. Can I shoot him? My lieutenant came back and said, no. He hasn't initiated any offensive action. You have to let him go. And he walked off. And I thought, boy, is this going to be one hell of a war? And I was right. That's the way it ended up and the way it carried on. We started seeing action. We were running patrols and compounds and that kind of thing. And I had to run a daily medical program to treat everybody and to see how they were and how they were doing. One of the problems I had with this is that we had 4 or 5 Marines, and they would come in and trying to get out of going out on patrols. They didn't want to, of course, to get killed. Everybody else could get killed but them. But they had found a way to medicate themselves so that I couldn't let them go. And what they were doing is they would take the mosquito repellent and they would rub it on their faces or on the bottom of their feet, and it would cause severe blistering. And there was just absolutely no way I could let them go out on a patrol. I didn't even want to get out of their tents, but they were trying to get out of going out with anybody else. And there's only 4 or 5 out of a number of. So it wasn't everybody, but these guys were just cowards. And I had to report them to my officers about what was going on. And they'd look at me and say, what are we supposed to do? What can we do? We can't stop them from using mosquito repellent. And how they learned that, I don't know. And then they also were, they'd walk into my sick call and I could smell them before they ever got there from using marijuana and all that type of thing. And again, my officers just wouldn't address it, do anything about it. I never, other than them, I never saw or dealt with any other of my Marines who had a drug problem. We didn't have a problem where we were. We went from to Da Nang, back to Da Nang, and from Da Nang we moved our way bit by bit to one position to another. One position was called Nemo Bridge, which is just outside of Da Nang. And that bridge, I remember it because we had 1/4-pound C4 charges. So we had to put a charge in them and drop them down into the water and then ignite them every 2 hours so that the Viet Cong couldn't swim in and blow up the things holding up the bridge. And I had one guy that did that. He put the charge in, but he didn't drop it down very far. And he lit it. And next thing I saw, his hand was nothing but wood. The charge had blown half the bridge into his hand. And I had to get him out. The next thing that Nemo was, we had an Army officer who came by. And I guess somebody hadn't taught him anything about war, because every time he stopped at one of our posts, he demanded to be saluted. And our Marines are saying, we don't salute officers in the field. You don't do that in Vietnam. He demanded that they did. Well, about the second day, he didn't make it to the end of the bridge before a sniper got him. And that was just part of the regimen in Vietnam, the way it happened, the way that went down. That's a quick rundown.
So would you also go out on patrols with the,
Of course,
yeah,
if they wanted the toilets cleaned, I cleaned the toilets. If they wanted to stand watches, I stood watches. I did everything in my
well,
range.
I certainly remember Quezon, Da Nang, and you Marines, really went through it there, I mean, it was
Oh,
like
yeah.
pretty horrific and just, so you were there primarily during that whole time that you were in Nam?
I went in on July 12th and I left Vietnam on the 18th of January,
No. So
69.
when you came back then, were you immediately discharged or were you still
No.
in for a while?
No, I had a number of things that went on in Vietnam before that, but they sent me to Corpus Christi, Texas, where I was a senior search and rescue corpsman. So when again, a Marine pilot put an airplane, $1 million airplane out in the Gulf, I had to go down out of the helicopter and grab him and drag him out of the water. And I did that. I had a number of bad things that happened down there where people lost their lives, and I had to tend to it. But that's what I basically did. It was a rescue corpsman.
So how long total were you in service then?
4 years, 1 month.
Is that right? Yeah. Well, so you actually enlisted then, did you?
I did.
Is that what it was?
Well, to
Okay.
get away from the friendly army.
Right. No, I understand that very well. Like, well, so did you when you got out of the service then, what happened then? Did you go back to school or anything, or?
No, I became felony stupid. Felony is the highest crime rate. Stupid is just stupid. And I ran over and joined the Denver Police Department, and I became a homicide detective for 16 years.
Is that right?
Mhm.
So what about that? That must have been pretty interesting, wasn't it?
Well, that was interesting. There's no doubt about that. Every day you never knew what's going to happen when you went to work.
I'm sure.
Yeah, being a cop, I sincerely enjoy being a cop, but I did something stupid there. I tried to arrest a drunk one night, and it was down on First and Steel,
Okay.
and he was totally drunk out of his mind. And I tried to get his license and all that kind of stuff, and he couldn't do that. He couldn't figure out where he was, what he was doing. Finally, I reached in the car, threw the steering wheel, tried to turn off the key. About that time, he suddenly realized where he was and what he was doing. So he took off, dragging me down the road. So I was caught in the steering wheel, and finally, all they could see was my gun belt on fire going down the street. And I finally hit the brake with my left hand and threw me out on the street. And he kept going, sort of, kind of, and ran into a building. And I got up and I ran to the building, and I drug him out through the window. And afterwards, my partner said, "Are you feeling okay?" And I said, "Well, I got a little pain in my back." So I went to DGH, Denver General Hospital.
No.
And I had an x-rays taken. I had a doctor that came in, he took the x-ray and he throws it up on the wall in the old days. And he goes, "Oh shit." And I went, "Oh my God, this is not good. Not to have a doctor say that to you." And ended up, I had a broken vertebrae in my back. And eventually I had eight surgeries on my back before they let me go. So, but going back to Vietnam, I wrote down some things that I thought were somewhat memorable in my time in Vietnam. The one thing that bothered all of us every day is that every day, no matter where you were in Vietnam, you would see that silver bird fly over your head, knowing that it was going home and you weren't. And that kind of, every day, that kind of pounded on you a little bit, that I wish I was someplace else in here. 5 times in Vietnam, I came under friendly fire, where I could have been killed. because of our own guys. One time we were on a hill not far from Da Nang, and the VC, very sneaky, went down in the Gulf just below us, probably 150 yards, and fired a rocket into Da Nang. Well, the next thing I knew, I saw this rocket coming at me, and I was on top of the hill, and it went just over the top of my head if I ducked, and landed in a little hill behind me. And I hadn't even thought about getting return fire, but that almost got me on that one. Another time, somebody was messing around with the 45 caliber pistol. There wasn't too many of them. When I went to Vietnam, they said, "Doc, you don't have to worry about anything. We're giving you a 45. I got there and they said, "We're out of 45s. Here's your M16. And I didn't even know how to clean it. I had a Marine saying, "That's okay, Doc. I'll take care of it for you. Thank you." And so that wasn't very good. But one of the things that happened to me on these hills is that every time we sat someplace, prostitutes would set it up across the road from us. And my lieutenants and captains were not dumb. They sat there and said, "There's no way we're going to stop 19 and 20-year-olds from going across that road to the prostitutes. Doc, get your ass over there. Treat them." That was not the best thing I've ever done in my life, because they didn't know anything about medication, about cleanliness, about hygiene. And it was a pretty pitiful, awful thing to try to treat them. And I didn't like that part of it. That was pretty tough. I also had to treat the citizens. They would take me down to somewhere, anywhere. "Here you are, Doc, treat all these people. They've got problems." And it didn't bother me to do that. I had one guy, he had dysentery for 2 years, and I gave him some Lamolo, we have on us still, and it stopped him up like a plug. And that guy followed me around for the next month. Every day, I couldn't get rid of him. He wanted to make sure he get stopped up some more. There was one base, I went across the street from the base, and because they called me and said there was a little boy, he was about 6 years old, he was dying. And so I went over there, and he had a temperature of about 105, and he had it for some time, and he was dying. And so I did the only thing I could think to do is I gave him some medication, and I showed his family how to fan him, pour water on him and fan him all night. And I worried about him all night. And the first thing in the morning, the sun came up, and I was back over there looking for him. I went into his hooch, he wasn't there. I'm going, "Where is he?" Because in Vietnam, they buried their people at night standing up. And I thought it was gone, and I couldn't find an interpreter to tell me what was going on. And I finally found one, and I said, "Where is this little boy?" "Oh, he's out there playing soccer." I went, "What?" And he was out there playing soccer. And it seemed I had given him the miracle drug that Americans gave to the Vietnamese. That was an aspirin. They had no way of not feeling the full effects of it. It just cured everything. It was the medical drug in Vietnam.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. The other thing that we were dealing with, of course, was the flora and fauna, the animals, everything that we ran into. I remember every time we went into a rice paddy, of course, we had leeches. We had leeches everywhere all the time. And again, one time where the mosquito repellent came in handy because we hit a reach and hit that goal. And so that helped us a whole lot to get rid of them. But we also had the rattlesnakes and the rats and the hornets. I had a group of two Marines who were out of their skulls. They went over and tried to knock down a big hornet's nest with the rifles. I ended up evacuating them before they died. And they didn't die, thank God, but I mean, that was not real smart to do. Another thing is the heat. The heat was between where I was up on top of, outside of Da Nang on a place called Hai Van Pass on Highway 1. The heat up there got so bad that we had probably a heat index between 110 and 120. I took a thermometer and put it in my helmet, and it broke the thermometer. It was that hot up there. So we were dealing with heat. At the same time, they had us doing different things, patrols and stuff. They loaded us down with Bangalore torpedoes and C4 explosives, about 100 pounds each, and had us climb this Ivan Pass. And they wanted to blow LZs, landing zones up there. And we got up there that very day. They had taken away our C ration food and gave us MREs, medical, our meals ready to eat, MRE, and set us up there. And all my guys, we had no idea what they were, how to use them, and anything else. My guys were eating them dry. They were just having a big time, you know, because there wasn't much weight, and it was wonderful. The problem was about half the way through the day, we ran out of water. We had no water. We had no nothing. And these guys were starting to get dysentery. And I was having to take care of them. So we called for an evacuation. Marine chopper came in and said, there's nothing there for me to land, and drove off. And in the meantime, we heard we had an Army unit with us, and he called Army, and an Army chopper came in, saved our lives. He brought in all the water, he brought in juices, he brought out all this stuff. If I ever knew who he was, I would have commended him. I mean, he did save our lives. It was, the Marine wouldn't do it, and which kind of pissed me off. Another time that bothered me a lot is we've been out in the field for about 2 weeks running night ambushes in the rain and the mud and all this crap. And we smelled horrible. I mean, we couldn't even stand ourselves. It was so bad. They finally brought us in and gave us a shower and gave us a clean uniform. And then they showed us a movie. It's called The Professional. I remember that. And we were sitting around, and they came down and gave us 3 cases of beer and ordered my men to get drunk. Now, they had that one down. That was one order they followed religiously. The problem was that about 3 o'clock in the morning, they came running in and said, settle up. Your other platoon has just walked into an ambush. They're getting the hell kicked out of them. Get your men up. They're drunk. I'm guys, I got them, getting them up. I'm trying to walk them around and trying to get their flak jackets on, trying to find their rifles, finally get them down and get them into a truck. They take us within about half a mile of the ambush. And as we're walking in, we ran into the Viet Cong coming out. We went hand to hand. And they broke off and ran into a ville. And about daylight, when it started getting daylight, my Marines started waking up saying, where are we? What are we doing? They didn't have any idea where they'd been or what they had done. They still had beer in their flak jackets. It was just, I mean, it's one of the most memorable things I can remember because it was so bad. I mean, guys out there fighting for their lives. But at the same time, I was in the middle of all this going on, and probably the biggest Vietnamese I'd ever seen, Viet Cong, jumped up in front of me, probably about 10 or feet away from me. And he stood up and he had his hands up in the air. And a Marine beside me had a Tonka toy. We called Tonka toy, but it was an M79 grenade launcher. And he went off of my hip. I could feel the heat of it when he fired it. Hit this guy right straight in the face. Sounded like he hitting a watermelon with a hammer. And there's no more face. All I saw was vertebrae sticking up. But the hand was still up. About that time, the hand opened. And out this grenade went boing and started coming down. Well, my immediate thought was, now do my parents want a nice shiny medal, or do they want me back home? I've got to figure this out real quick because I got 8 seconds before the grenade goes off. So my immediate thought was, run, you little son of a gun. And I ran and yelled for everybody else to run too, because I didn't want that medal. I wasn't going to jump on any grenade like the rest of them did. I mean, that was nice they did that, but I got my men out of there before we had to do that. There was everywhere we went, we were in. Vietnam was red. The ground was red. It was a lot of iron in the ground, and so the ground was red. And so every time the monsoons came, we were up to our ankles in mud, and you would have known that. The other thing that got to me is that we got into firefights with them numerous times, and it was kind of poetic. I mean, I must have been out of my mind, I think, but we get into gunfight with them, and we'd fire our red tracers over here, and they'd fire their green tracers over here, and they looked like fireflies in the sky. And I'm sitting looking at them thinking, wow, this is kind of neat. Then I think, those suckers are trying to kill me. So there wasn't quite as poetic as I was thinking at the time. We ran ambushes at night, and we ran them almost every night, and monsoon or not. And we'd go out, and as we went out, you would take your grenade pins and you'd straighten them so you could throw your pins faster. They weren't pulling with their teeth. You know that. They were hard. And we'd straighten the pins so we could throw them faster. And then when we went back in the morning, we'd put our pins back. One night we went back to our hooch, and I've even got a picture of the hooch where a Marine with the straighten put his pins back. The pin fell out of the grenade, and he's standing there holding the live grenade. Now, where we were at, we're in this hooch, we were on the middle of a hill. You could throw the grenade up the hill, you could throw it down the hill. This Marine decided that throwing it up the hill was the best place to throw it, and he did. And it, of course, exploded, and I had 12 wounded to take care of as a result. So again, I'm saying my Marines were not the brightest people in the world. They lacked a little bit of something there, but well, maybe it was intelligent. Well, I didn't say that. They were damn good Marines, and they took care of me, and I took care of them the best I could. I only lost one person or two in Vietnam. I got a call. We were on a position on top of Hai Van Pass. We got a call that our other position 3 miles down the road had just been hit. And they said, we have people down. And so I had to get 3 miles down the road as fast as I could. Well, at that position was my other corpsman, and a ARVN soldier. I got down there, and the ARVN soldier had what we call a death rattle. I couldn't do anything for him. He'd been hit in the head with shrapnel. The other one was my corpsman, and he had had his arm blown off. And it took me so long to get down there that he bled out, and he died in my arms. And there's nothing I tried to save him, but the hospital ship Repose was right out in the Gulf. I could see the ship. I saw the helicopter take off and come in to try to help us, but it was too late.
No.
I couldn't save him. Earlier that morning, I'd been outside my tent, and I don't know what we were doing. I was with my lieutenant, and a grenade went off, and I took shrapnel on my leg, and I had to try running down that 3 miles with my injury, and I just couldn't get to him in time. And that's the one thing that
Stays with you.
that's bothered me the most.
So is this when you got your Purple Heart then?
Yes.
Like, okay.
Yeah, I had shrapnel in my leg. Most of it I pulled out myself.
Yeah.
One more thing that was memorable. The Marines couldn't drink hard liquor. The officers had their little ration cards, and they give me their cards, and they sent me to Da Nang. Get down there, Doc, get our booze and bring it back. Well, okay, I'll do it. So I went down to Da Nang to a place called Freedom Hill. At Freedom Hill is where they used to give us free donuts and coffee. I got there and I said, where's my coffee and my donut? Well, we got to charge you for that. What? That'll be 25 cents a donut. Well, why are you charging? Well, we have to charge the Australians, so we have to charge you. So they wouldn't give it to us for free. But in the meantime, I'm hearing this music, and I looked down the hill, way down the hill, and I saw this gorgeous gal standing out there on a stage. And with her was Bob Hope. And the Bob Hope show, I had no idea that it was going on, but I ended up going to the Bob Hope show and taking the booze back to my officers, and they were happy with me. That was basically a lot of NOM and other service. And after that,
So was there any particular pivotal event for you in your experience there that had any kind of, you talked about the one dying in your arm, in your arms.
that was, I kind of expected that was going to happen sometime during the time I was there, you know, that I expected more combat.
Right.
Yeah. And, but I probably the most was arriving in Da Nang and seeing dead bodies.
Sure.
That
Sure.
was the first thing that I saw.
You know, my recollection of Nam and particularly Da Nang, you know, and your Marines, the first division there. And it was like, I mean, you guys really caught a lot of stuff, you know, and it was a pretty horrific experience for you, I think, you know, like, I don't mean to drag that up and, you know, whatever for you, but.
Well, with
Just,
all the mental stuff that went on too, you know, taking care of guys that getting their Dear John letters,
Right.
and all that kind of stuff, you know, it completely tore them up. It was
Sure.
horrible.
Yeah.
But that, you know, that was the mental part of it kind of hung on you all the time.
Yeah. No. It's like, I remember.
Yeah.
It's like, so let's see. I think any particular humorous events, anything that,
Well, yeah, I had a Marine who came to me, Doc, I need help. Well, what's your problem? Well, before I came over here, I met this gal and we kind of got it on one night. Now I'm getting a card and letter from her saying that we're going to get married. You're going to get married. Yeah. She's sending me these letters and telling me we're going to get married. Well, I guess I don't know what you could tell her, write her back and tell her you're not. And so the next week, Doc, she just contacted my mother to set up the wedding. What? He didn't know how she contacted his mother, but she did. And they were making up the cards for the wedding. What do I do now, Doc? I said, you better get to a chaplain in a hurry. Get some help from them. You know, if they can help you. Third week, Doc, it's all planned. As soon as I get home and get off the plane, we're going to have the wedding. I told you to go to a chaplain before us. He didn't do it. I don't know if he got married or not, but I couldn't do anything about it.
like a shotgun marriage almost or something, huh?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
That was funny.
So let me ask you this. What was the best part of your experience in the military?
I guess part of it was through the adventure growing up.
Yeah.
You became a man. You know, like they keep saying that you went to the war, you wrote a check on your life for the balance of your life, whether it was cashed or not. And that was part of it, you know, that I went back to school when I got out and got a degree when I was 55 years old.
Is that right?
On the GI Bill.
Yeah, good for you. You were able to use it finally, huh?
Yeah, I finally got, I couldn't go back in and handle speech therapy, a vowel sound for 30 minutes.
Sure.
I could not do that anymore. And I got a degree in management of HR.
So back to when you were working then for the Denver Police Department, did you get a medical retirement from there?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got some from the military,
Right.
from the shrapnel, and then I got from the police department, but not much. They kind of screwed me over on that.
No. Well, and then following that, did you develop another career or something? Or
Yes, I went to the worst job I've ever had in my life. I had to have a degree to get hired by the state. And I got hired by the state in the Department of Labor and I decided who got unemployment claims and who did. First of all, you had people roaming around outside with guns because they wanted their money. Secondly, they were calling continuously during this period of time I was there in the 90s. Waiting times were 3 to 4 hours to get through to us.
Oh.
And we were taking as many calls as we could take. We were working 7 days a week. We had bosses who were in their 60s and 70s who had been there since they were teenagers. And they were running up and down the hallways telling us to work harder and work faster. They listened to every phone call. They watched every keystroke. They did everything. I mean, it's just complete total pressure on you forever and ever.
No.
I hated it. The only thing that kept you there because they kept raising your salary.
No.
My salary went from $3,000 a week to 10 to keep you there. I mean, they did everything they could. It was horrible.
No.
But I hated that job more than every job I've ever had, especially after coming out of the military and the police department, where they're relegated. But this was just people screaming at you. Yeah, there were some fun times though. I took some claims that were so funny that you just couldn't believe them. That there's one guy called in and I turned down his claim for unemployment. Why did you turn me down for unemployment? I said, because it says here you hit your boss in the head with a shovel. He said, yeah, but I only hit him once. And he wanted his unemployment money. I had another gal come in and said, well, I'd quit my job because I couldn't get to work. We were snowed in. I couldn't get out the door to get to work. They fired me. And I said, you couldn't get to work? No. But did you have a back door? Oh, I didn't think of that. And then the third one, the lady says, I didn't see it coming. I just didn't see it coming. And she said, I went to work Friday, came home and went to work on Monday, and the place was shut down, closed, gone. I had no job. I said, well, where'd you work? Psychic hotline.
I'm sorry?
The psychic hotline.
Oh, really?
She didn't see it coming. Well, I didn't let that go. I made her explain to me how the psychic hotline worked before I let her go. So that was a good part of it, but the rest of it was just horrific.
Yeah.
So you did learn along the way the good and the bad, and I tried before I left Vietnam. I tried to get into dust offs. We had another incident, the one where we ran into the enemy as they were coming out of an ambush. Well, some of those people were wounded, and I had to take care of them. And this one guy had a terrific stomach wound, and I called for a chopper, and my captain, who was 2 or 3 miles away, refused to let him come in. I kept calling for him. I needed dust off. I needed dust off. He wouldn't send it. Finally, out of the middle of nowhere, about 3 o'clock in the morning, this Army chopper, some 18-year-old kid up there buzzing around doing his thing, said, you need some help? Yeah. He said, well, give me a light. And I stood there with the cigarette lighter, and he came in on the lighter and picked up my wounded and took him and came back a second time. I wished I'd found out who he was to write him up. But in the meantime, the Marines, hearing all this, because it was an open channel at night, and they could hear all that's going on. The next morning, he got up and tried to get it out of his tent, and it was covered with grenades. They did not like that. They got him out of the country that day.
No.
They were going to kill him. I didn't want him killed, but I still wanted him. I had to get my wounded out.
Right.
And so I tried to get into choppers before I left. And they only asked, they looked at me and said, you want to get on dust off? I said, yeah. They said, are you married? Yeah. No. If you were married, they wouldn't let you in dust off. The life of a corpsman on a dust off chopper was 72 hours.
Is that right? Wow.
So they saved my life.
So Barry, you brought some pictures along too. Do you mind? Can we take a look at those?
No.
Like,
this was me when I joined the Navy, and I was 24 years old, and just a young, brash type person.
Yeah.
This was in Vietnam. up by on High Bond Pass.
Really?
This was a picture of me at the Nemo Bridge, where that one fellow got hurt so bad. And this was me after we'd been on an ambush the night before Thanksgiving, and we had killed 7 enemy. And we had to go back home and eat Thanksgiving dinner. The only problem with that is that I had a lieutenant who was medal hungry, and all he wanted was medals. And he had us run an ambush on an enemy patrol that wasn't armed. And then when he got through, we had to go out and drag their bodies back and look at them. One of them was a female. And we got there, the Army was out there playing along games with the female, and my Marines almost killed the Army. You don't touch our wounded, you don't touch our killed. Marines are very touchy about that. And he took all the bodies and put them in the truck, ran them into intelligence to show that he had been there, then sent them back to me at 4 o'clock in the morning on the truck. Said, here, Doc, take care of them. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, I've got a truckload of dead people, and I'm trying to figure out what the hell am I going to do with them. Finally, I just stopped the truck in the middle. There was the Ville here and the Ville here. I stopped the truck in the middle of it, started sounding the horn and yelling and screaming and firing shots and everything, and we drove off after we threw the bodies in the middle of the road. That's all I could do. Let them take care of them.
Right. Right.
But I mean, this was Vietnam. This was not a playground.
So how do you feel like this has affected your life, or your experience in the military and non? It's like, and what kind of?
Well, I know I came back, I had PTSD,
No,
and I still at times do.
no,
It comes in and goes. It was pretty bad when I came back. I had 400 fights my first 2 years on the street as a cop, and I probably initiated half of them
no,
just out of meanness and angry.
no.
And it took me a long time. It's taken me all these years to get to the point. I mean, I'm 78 years old. It's to get to a point where I can look back and see what happened. And now I paint, I carve things, I do crossword puzzles, I do poetry. Pretty much sit around and do nothing other than that.
Oh, it sounds like you got some interesting hobbies though too, you know?
Yeah,
That's definitely a good thing
you had to do
yeah.
something,
No,
you know.
absolutely.
I couldn't just not do, you know, I don't think I'm a type A personality, but I definitely had to keep myself going. Oh, the other part is that the VA discovered that I have a disease that they don't know what it is or how to treat it or anything else, and that it's fatal. And they gave me 3 years to live, but I'm in my 6th year now. So thank you, dear God.
So any life lessons you feel like you learned from your time in service there?
Don't go back.
That's a good one.
Do whatever you can to stay out of that. I mean, war is so shattering to my mind. I've been raised in the Catholic schools. I'd gone to all Catholic studies. I read the Bible. I did all this, and suddenly I'm over there where they're. I didn't tell you about this one. I first went up on 861 South. My Marines were wearing black things on their belts, on their dog tags. And I looked at them and I said, "What is that?" They said, "That's ears, Doc." I said, "Ears? They were cutting the ears off to them." I was surprised they weren't scalping them. But I told them, I'm the sedentary person around here now, and those ears are gone. Get rid of them.
Yeah.
And so I convinced them to get rid of them right then and to start collecting grenade pins to put on. But about 6 months later, one of the Marines' dad worked for a card company, and he sent a case of ace of spades. So from then on, every time they killed a gook, they would staple the ace of spades to his forehead. That convinced me that this is war, and all those moral things I've been taught and all the religion, the teachings and all that stuff were gone. They don't count anymore. This is dog eat dog, kill it, kill. And that's the main thing. If I learned a lesson was, be true to God. Don't go to war.
No, I've had a somewhat similar experience that I've had a profound effect in that way, as far as moral injury, it's called.
That's what I was morally just down. I had nothing.
Right.
All I had was I can carry this over to the police department. It was again adrenaline rush.
Sure. But a lot of guilt, a lot of rage as well. It's like
I had a lot of it. That was first. Well, I was on the police department. Is when I went through the worst part of that, the rage.
Yeah.
I mean, I took it out on the citizens of Denver.
Yeah.
I walked the beat for my first 2 years. I walked Larimer, which was Skid Row. I walked 5 Points, and I walked East Colfax, and that's where all this took part. I was a walking rage.
I do.
All left because of Vietnam.
Those were really, really difficult years, a lot of ways for sure. I remember well. Like,
the way we were treated too.
Well, yeah, there's that too. But, so what do you wish more people knew about veterans and military service?
I wish that I have quite a few people, especially wearing my hat. I have quite a few people that thank me for my service. Not a whole lot. Most of the people that have been in the service, some kids, they train their kids to talk to me. And I always tell them when they say, thank you for your service, I tell them, thank you for saying that. Because it was nice for them to honor us. But I look at Veterans Day today. Look at the respect for the Armed Forces Day today. They don't care. They just don't care about us. They don't care about the veterans. If the veterans didn't support each other, I don't know what we'd do.
It's true. The VA has been profoundly important.
Exactly.
For our lives,
And the vet organizations,
Sure.
the VFW and DAV, American Legion, they've kept us together. They've kept our an idea that you're special, and that's what we needed.
So last thing here, I guess, is there anything else you'd like to add that we haven't covered?
Is there anything we haven't covered?
We covered a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like,
No, I just for the heck of it, I brought along a picture of my great grandfather, and he fought for the 13th Iowa in the Civil War. My other grandfather fought for the 53rd Tennessee Volunteers. I can't find a picture of him, but he survived the war and became a civic speaker, gave speeches
Really?
and stuff in Iowa after him being in prison.
well, you said something about Andersonville.
That's where he was.
God.
Yeah, he was in Andersonville. So
It's amazing that he was able to survive that.
well, he came home with dysentery and some bowel problems and stuff.
I'm sure.
But you want to know a story about him?
Sure.
He fought in Shiloh, and he was in a place called I can't remember the name of it now. Something Hollow or something. Hornet's Nest. He fought in Hornet's Nest, and while he was there, he's sitting there firing. I guess he had his rifle and he was ready to shoot, and his best friend who enlisted with him, there in the war, reached up and did something and blew off his finger. Of course, he said, you know, I blew off your finger. And the guy said, no, you didn't. You didn't do that. I got hit or something and he lost a finger. My grandfather was so sorry about the whole thing. He drugged the guy home and had him marry my aunt.
And they lived happily ever after.
I guess they
Yeah,
did.
right, exactly.
He died in about 1919.
That's amazing. Well, Barry, thank you. I really appreciate your time and sharing your story with us. Okay, it's been great. And it's an honor to meet you, sir.
Not beat you. Hey, glad you're still here. You know?
Surprisingly, huh?
Yeah, all of us.
All right, very good. All right, I think that concludes our interview. Got it?
Merrimack and decided to go join Washington, but it happened to be at Valley Forge at the time. Not a good choice.
No, it's like, well,
Strange.
well,
But you had grandfathers on each side too?
you know, I think they were my great grandfathers, probably. It's like, or if not great, it was like there were actually 5 brothers, and I think that 4 of them were on. There's either 3 or 4 that were on the Union side, and maybe 2 on the South.
Are you ready?
We are.
Are we ever ready?
So now I think we're as
Well, if you're
Okay.
ready, yeah,
How
if you're
is his?
ready,
Is it? Can you see his microphone? Is it reading okay? The level?
frequency testing.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
You got a good reading?
The light is not on.
Oh, really?
I just said,
Yours
is on.
Mine is on. I thought they were both on.
Now it's on.
Okay, good. No, I
Again,
understand
it's just-
that. Why don't you put it right up there if you can? Just pinch it. And, make sure you pull some hair and you can turn that up.
Like that?
1, 2, 3.
Let me see what we got. Yeah. All right. I think that should do it.
All right. And again, like we discussed, don't shy away from anything. That's the purpose of it.
Well, it's not perfect.
And if you need tissues or water, we have that. Do you need anything?
I'm fine.
All right. You ready?
Yep.
Okay, we're rolling. Okay. Cue me.
If you have any devices, silence. We'll get started.
Okay, today is Friday, May 19th. It's